Hello and very warm welcome to all of you in this edition of Public Forum. I'm Anurag Puneta with you. On Friday, top Iranian nuclear scientist and a brigadier general in the elite Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps IRGC, Mr. Farizadeh, got assassinated on the outskirts of Tehran. This has triggered a new crisis in West Asia. It is the most high-profile killing of an Iranian high-profile figure since the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani, who commanded the Quds forces in the IRGC. He got killed on 20th of January this year by the US forces in Baghdad. Mr. Fakhrizadeh had overseen Iran's nuclear weapons program in the 90s and early 2000s and remained a key figure in the country's nuclear program and defense ministry. Iranian media reported that the gunman opened fire at his vehicle, his car, while he was driving back home. Iranian Foreign Minister Mr. Javad Zarif also said that there are serious indications that Israel was involved in this attack, in this assassination. American media have also quoted US intelligence sources as saying that the attack was carried out by Israel. In the last 10 years, at least 6 Iranian scientists were killed in bombs and gun attacks in which Israeli hands were suspected. And this killing comes at a very crucial time for Iran. There are hopes that the US President-elect Mr. Joe Biden would return to talks with Iran and would end probably months of maximum pressure on Iran, a policy which was adopted by the outgoing US President Donald J. Trump and which took both countries to the brink of war after the killing of Soleimani, as we know that. So why this assassination took place now? Is this assassination about stopping a bomb? It seems quite unlikely. It seems it is about preventing a diplomacy and a possible resumption of dialogue between US and Iran under Joe Biden, and how difficult it would be for Mr. Biden to now chart a new course for US, or will the ice thaw in Iran and US relations? It would be interesting to know, as India has also been the kind of sufferer due to the sanctions put out by US. So we are going to discuss all these things in this edition of Public Forum. And joining me are two journalists, one from Tehran, Mr. Habib Abdullah Hussain. He is Iranian-based journalist and commentator. Very warm welcome to the show, Mr. Habib. Appreciate
Thanks
that.
for having me.
Yeah, you are speaking to Lok Sabha television. And joining me from New Delhi, Mr. Avik Sain, journalist who keeps an eye on Iran and Afghanistan. Very warm welcome to the show, Avik, to you as well. Avik, I would start with you. What do you make of this assassination and why it would create, further strain the relation between Iran and US?
Well, this is very interesting. A lot has been written in American press now that this assassination would prevent diplomacy between the incumbent Biden administration and Iran. So, as Biden had himself said that he wants to rejoin the nuclear deal. So that is one angle. But you see, given the stature of the person who has been assassinated, Iran is very likely to retaliate before Biden joins office. So in this case, I don't really see that this would disrupt any thawing relations between US and Iran once Biden becomes the president, because right now the situation is such that Iran is actually the victim of a form of terrorism. So if it retaliates, I don't think that would create a pressure on US to not speak to Iran, because the retaliation will not be indiscriminate. It will be very channelized and planned. So I think there is still room for diplomacy between Iran and US.
Okay.
But this assassination, I think, will be avenged very quickly.
Okay. Mr. Habib, your opinion. You are in Tehran, and Mr. Iranian Foreign Minister Mr. Javad Zarif also said that there are serious indications that Israel was involved in this attack. In fact, American media have also quoted some of the US intelligence sources. But what do you think are the real motive behind this assassination at this point of time, and how it will impact the US and Iran relation and under Mr. Joe Biden's tenure?
Well, I think that it's a sort of air's scorched policy. They're trying to scorch the airs for any possible diplomacy. And they know that Iran actually, they're just trying to test Iran's patience. Iran is just trying to be strategically patient. And, they know that as the top officials and the supreme leader has already said, retaliation is certain, but it's just a matter of time, and the time and the venue will not be determined by those who have masterminded this, assassination of Iran's nuclear scientists. And this is not the first time, actually. Nearly half a dozen Iranian scientists have already been assassinated in recent years, since 2010. And this is the latest, but the context is absolutely different from those years. Biden is just coming to office, and he has already pledged to rejoin the nuclear deal that President Trump withdrew. And here many Iranians think that actually Trump, who is a lame luck president now, in his final days will try to do anything to spoil and ruin actually any efforts for future for diplomacy. And for Iranians, actually, the wall of mistrust is very tall. Now, many Iranians blame the U.S. and actually as the ally of Israel and the main supporter of Israel. And to the date, the United States has failed actually to condemn the assassination attack. And, Iranians are very sensitive to such issues. As you said, this assassination comes after General Soleimani, the most popular Iranian general and IRGC Quds Force head, assassination in Iraq. And Iran is still saying that it has not retaliated for that attack. What Iran did, the missile attack on Ain al-Assad base in Iraq, the US base indeed, it was not Iran's response. They said that this was just, the supreme leader said this was just a slap in the face, and actually real retaliation will come, the revenge will come, but at the same time, they're trying to be strategically patient.
Okay. But one thing I would like to ask you, Habib, as well. I mean, one version of his assassination is being said that he was shot by a remote controlled machine gun, which was operating out of another car. And in fact, the semi-official Fast News also said that it is possible that this can be done without the, I mean, are you of the opinion that it can be done without the connivance of someone from inside?
Well, there are conflicting reports to the date, from Friday. They first that there are a number of gunmen who sprayed the car with bullets, and after that, since yesterday, there's been a report by, semi-official and now official news agencies that it was a remote-controlled, as you said, gun and installed in a pickup, which actually was followed by a blast, a bomb attack. And what now, some Iranian media are now saying that Israeli-made weapons have been discovered from the venue of the assassination. I mean, weapons which have the logo of Israeli defense industries. All of this means that actually Iranians are holding Israel responsible for this attack. And no matter who and how, actually, as you know, it's just, as it's wont of Israel, Israel always refrains from claiming responsibility for such attack. But for Iranians, it's almost taken for granted. As President Rouhani said, as Mr. Zarif said, as the leader implicitly, when he is talking about enemies, definitely Israel is one of them. So Iranians hold Israel responsible, and no matter how, this will actually lead to further escalations, maybe in a foreseeable future.
Okay. So it will lead the further retaliation, let's say the confrontation in the region. But Avik, my question to you now that, in fact, Saudi Arabia has condemned the assassination, this killing, but Israel has done nothing to dispel this view that he was, I mean, this country was behind this assassination. Is it a kind of a trap by Israel as well to somehow drag Iran into some kind of a confrontation either with the American forces or with Israel?
It is very likely, given the timing, that Israel did it purposefully so that Iran would retaliate, and then they expect that Trump would come to their side when Iran retaliates. So that, I see it as part of that plan. And when it comes to the Saudis, the Saudi role is also not very clear because there some people have hinted that given the recent meeting between Pompeo and Saudi and Israeli officials in Riyadh, it is likely that Saudis also are aware in the loop about it. And it has also been reported that the US administration headed by Trump was also kept in the loop about this assassination. So these are certain angles there. Right now, we cannot discount any of those angles.
Okay, okay. But Habib, I mean, what options do you think that it would have in front of the Iranian administration, Iranian government? I mean, to go for the kind of, let's say, the revenge or let's say the retaliation, which would be befitting for the Iranian pride or let's say Iranian psyche, because it might be a kind of a trap by a country like Israel or US.
Well, as I said, Iranians are trying to exercise patience and restraint now because they see it as a kind of trap by Israel. And as President Rouhani said earlier, Iranian government and officials, he said, are wise enough and smart enough not to fall into the trap which has already been made by Israelis, you know, and they know the timing and they know that this is maybe, you know, this can just destroy all options or chances for diplomacy. Even Iranian parliament, which is now controlled by conservative MPs, and I mean the hardliners, yesterday they just ratified a sort of a draft bill, which calls for a step-by-step, you know, reduction of commitments of Iran's commitments to the JCPOA. They didn't actually want for actually sort of very prompt or, you know, rapid retaliation or, you know, cutting any ties with JCPOA, I mean the IAEA. They're all very cautious and patient because they know that this is not a good time to actually get any revenge. And as IRGC and other officials have already said, they will not play in the field of enemies, you know. I mean that the rules of the game will not be determined by the enemies. So they will not react or respond. They're under tremendous pressure here from public opinion, you know. As you said, it's a matter of national dignity and pride because Iran, for the past several years, has already said that if Israel does anything wrong, it will come under attack. I mean, missile attack by Iranian actually forces. But now they're not doing anything because actually even the IRGC and, you know, the I mean the revolutionary forces know that this is not a good time. And as the leader said, you know, the leader actually said two things about this issue. Number one, to find those who were behind this attack. Number two, retaliation. I mean that the priority now for Iranians is first to find the security in their security system and then retaliate. So they already have a lot of time for retaliation and they will not let, actually, as they call the enemy, know what they're going to do.
Okay, but one thing more to you, Habib, as well. If Iran retaliates against the US interest in anywhere in Middle East or let's say in the West Asia, will it not queer the pitch for Joe Biden's, let's say, the possible intention of resumption talks with Iran? Because it would be in interest of the Iran as well. If Mr. Joe Biden comes out with a kind of a soothing statement, will it force Iran to reconsider its decision to retaliate?
Well, it's a matter of Iran and Israel now, not Iran and the US. So I think it's not actually rational to consider that Iran will attack any US base in the region. You see what I mean? Because Iran knows the ramification and the consequences of such actually attack. So I think it's just Israel that Iran is now holding responsible, and Trump. Trump is already a goner. He is a lame duck president who has already lost the race to the White House. So Iran has no reason to actually launch any attack in these days. I mean, the final days of Trump, and to actually go into confrontation trap. But for Mr. Biden, I think it's going to be a very tough task, because he has already pledged to re-enter the deal, and Iranians are now demanding, more demanding than before. This is coming after assassination of top General Soleimani, assassination of a top nuclear scientist, and also it comes against the backdrop of sanctions. Iran demands damages from the US for economic and lots of problems that these sanctions incurred on Iranians. So Iranians are becoming more demanding, and they want President Biden to take the first step, and that is very important. It's a matter of, I would call it, if any deal is going to happen, it would be a sort of step-by-step plan of action.
Okay. Avik, I mean, are you the same opinion that it is a kind of a very tightrope walking for the Iranian administration and let's say the government? If they retaliate, it will somehow quit the pitch for their effort for the resumption of let's say the dialogue with the US, possibly under Joe Biden. Or why Israel, despite allegations, are not doing anything to counter that view that Israel is possibly behind this assassination? Is it a kind of a trap by Israel to drag Iran into any kind of confrontation with Israel or with any other forces?
I'll come to your second question first. So, in such covert talks, the question is about plausible deniability. So, they did not claim the operation, so they exercised plausible deniability. But at the same time, they want to achieve notoriety because they want to show that we can do some audacious act in a hostile country. So, that's the reason I think that they did not deny any involvement in this attack. And it is very likely that they were involved. So, even if they deny, that makes no difference. Uh, the second thing, when it comes to whether there is room for Iranians to maneuver, uh, though a lot of experts are of the opinion that any Iranian retaliation might create hurdles in the path of diplomacy with the US, but I think that there would be some kind of a retaliation by Iran, and they are prepared for the US to come to the side of Israel in that case, because in the Middle East, Iran is a pretty big regional power, and even if the US comes to Israel's side, then as well there will be losses on both sides. It's not going to be a very easy task for the US to, I mean, roll over the Israeli forces.
Okay, okay. Habib, yeah, okay, okay. Habib, my question to you now is that possibly we are talking, and let's say in the media in general is talking about the possible retaliation and the ramification of this assassination. But don't you think killing of General Soleimani first in January this year, and now the killing of top nuclear scientist now, have shown the chinks in the armor of the, let's say, the Iranian establishment as well? Because this might give them, a country like Israel and the US, an impression that they can carry out this kind of attack anytime. So this will further endanger the lives of the many top officials, or let's say the key figures in the Iran, and eventually force country to come into the conflict with the US or Israel. So I mean the entire pressure, or let's say the lies on Iranian security forces to defend their important people?
Well, actually, Iran is now facing, I would call it an agonizing choice of retaliation or patience and diplomacy. And Iran is just trying to be patient right now. And they will definitely, as you said, they're just deeming such issues, and they take them already into consideration, that they need to respond to show the country's deterrence power and to make sure that actually they are capable of doing so. But at the same time, they're very wary of the timing of this incident. They know that any actually miscalculation can lead to a disaster in the region. And here in Iran, official narrative is that, well, assassination of Iran's scientists shows Iran's power, scientific power. They say that such assassinations cannot dent Iran's, for example, nuclear expertise. Or, for example, assassination of General Soleimani. They said that, of course, he was an asset, but they cannot dent Iran's and role. So they view it this way. They say that, okay, we will just be patient, and retaliation is certain and for sure, but this shows that we are actually making sort of breakthrough, and our enemies are getting angry and angry. And in response, as I said yesterday, the parliament issued, they just ratified a new bill. And today, Iran's Ministry of Defense just said that we have doubled the budget of the research center, which was led by late scientist Fakhrizadeh. It means that this will just, boost and enhance and strengthen Iran's will to continue its path. And the retaliation and revenge is another issue that will definitely, be taken into consideration. And just remember, Iranians are very good chess players, historically speaking, like Indians. We Iranians, they're great at playing chess, and they know how to play the rules, and they know how to play chess. Patience is the first important element needed in this game. So they know that they need to be patient, and they shouldn't actually take any rash decisions. They're just trying to control themselves.
Okay.
Today, even I was just watching, the funeral. All of the people and officials who talked, they were just talking about patience, patience, and patience.
Okay. My final question to you, Habib, before I wrap up the program, if people are of the opinion that this killing is not about stopping a bomb, but killing of a top nuclear scientist, do you think will impede Iran's ambition for nuclear capabilities somehow, in any way?
Well, look, Iran has never been, as the official actually statement, and even those fatwa, it's a religious decree by Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei, who is also a religious authority, which bans use and production of any nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction. Iran is a victim of mass destruction weapons, so it has never been after, and it says that it has never been after bombs.
Okay.
Dr. Fakhrizadeh was actually leading a team which was working on corona vaccine and corona testing kits. This is what actually Iranian officials are now saying. So there was a loss of a scientist, much revered scientist, and well, if they want to boost their nuclear capabilities and nuclear program activities, they will just try to do it in a sort of plan of action. As the same thing they did with JCPOA, that was also a step-by-step plan of action. They just increased their compliance with the deal in response to removal of sanctions. The same thing, the reverse process can now happen. They will just reduce their commitments to the deal and actually cooperation with the IAEA in response to any possible reaction from the European Union and the United States. I mean, if the sanctions are gonna be stay in place, Iran will definitely change its calculus. So far, it has been a strategic patience
Okay. Okay.
for over some 7 years. But if this is gonna happen, I mean, if the sanctions are gonna be in place and they're taking a heavy toll on Iran's economy, then Iran will change its calculus definitely.
Okay, okay. Final question to you, Avik. I mean, and I need a short answer from you. I mean, we are talking about the Iran's possible reaction, and because many things are taking place not only in Iran but in Afghanistan as well, and India somehow. Got affected as well when the sanction took place, and when Trump administration put the sanction on Iran. What ramification do you see would be on this region, and let's say the Indo-Iranian relations as well? Do you see any thing on that or not?
No, I don't see any change in India-Iran relations due to this, because this is about Iran's relations with uh, Israel or other countries. They don't have a relation, so it's about the enmity between Israel and Iran. So I don't see any angle of India getting affected in any manner due to this.
Okay, 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 okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Avik. Thank you very much, Mr. Habib, for joining me from Tehran. Appreciate that you spoke to us and took out the time. So, opinion that comes from the panelist and general as well, that assassination of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh is not about stopping a bomb, and it's about preventing a diplomacy, and many people will have to work. And this took place on Friday when the top Iranian nuclear scientist got killed, got assassinated on the outskirts of Tehran. And this has triggered a very new crisis in West Asia. How Tehran reacts would determine many things. That's all we have in this edition of Public Forum. Thank you very much for watching.